Good evening, everybody. I'm John OLoughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and where is Olivia? Olivia is here with her flag to welcome the Ospreys back to Cobb Island. She's all excited. She saw her first Osprey friend this afternoon as we were driving across the bridge, and George knows exactly where that is. So, Olivia, what do you say?
She's in love.
All right. Well, everybody's in love now. It's springtime. We had a new bird drop by the studio. The Cardinals are back out in the front yard, and so little friend dropped in here. You never know about the birds; they're going to show up sometimes. But golly, it's good to see you guys. George, Webb, and Professor Hamamoto, welcome once again to me.
Thanks, John.
Hey.
We're going to give the establishment the bird today.
Okay, I like that idea.
Well, John, I'm here in New Orleans. I just want to show you, we have a whole bunch of YouTubers from New Orleans that came down to meet us tonight. And so I'm a little bit in a loud area, but I will turn my mic off. But I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of people here that love you, John, and there's a lot of people that love you, Dr. Hamamoto. They all know you, and it's great to be out here meeting the people that are the fans.
Thank you.
And thank you, George.
Hi, everybody.
Professor Hamamoto, can I just jump in right here and say I got my color copy of Let's Call Him McDuff. George Webb, sir, I salute you. This is more than I could ever have imagined. And everybody knows I've been struggling trying to get myself to write a book about my dad, and I couldn't do it, but George did it, and it's just right, George. Congratulations. It's a fantastic book. The printing is great. The color pictures, there's so many of them. And you selected a number of my favorite pictures of my father that are in here. I'm just honored to have you, George Webb, to write this. And I tell you, everybody needs a copy, at least one copy, if not an extra one for your friends or relatives.
Absolutely. Congratulations again, George. And while we're flashing each other, look at this. At one, they struck. This is a great one. I have to buy a second copy, though, because I'm already starting to. But I wanted to, if we can, devote some more attention to this book, George. I have some finds for it, because as soon as I was reading it, just shortly before I came on air here, I found something that harkens back to your theological discussion of Erasmus. Are you there, George?
I'm here. I just wanted to show you how many fans turned out for you guys tonight. And,
well, how did the book signing go? Did you move a lot of copies?
Oh, yeah. We're at it now. We had a tour guide from Louisiana talk to us. We had a gal whose father ran numbers for Carlos Marcello at this Cuban cigar bar. She's right here. She's standing right here. We had another gal who has a 2.5-year-old baby right here. She's Nola Butterfly. She has a YouTube channel, and they all came out. Dave, an attorney from deep here in the French Quarter, and then several paralegals from that firm, and they're all big fans of McDuff, because they're like, oh, there's one guy didn't sell out. There's one guy who didn't sell out. So it's really been great here meeting all these people that are these fans, because you don't normally get to meet them.
Great. Sounds like a lively group over there.
I've got a copy of what was it, at dawn they struck? Is that what it was called? And I've got it over in the other room, and I haven't opened it yet because I've been, as much time as I've had free, I've been looking at Let's Call Him McDuff. So yeah, we can certainly talk about that book.
Yeah, because George was going in on Erasmus, and he was tying it in with Stephen Kinzer's discussion that, John, you had been reading from Poisoner in Chief, about taking the shallow draft boat to try to poison Francis Walsingham, right? But he was talking about Erasmus, the theologian from the lowlands, the Netherlands, Holland. as being this proponent of predestination. And in reading this book today, George, At One They Struck, and I'm going to have to just keep reading. It's so packed and dense with information. You got to keep going back over it. I came across your reference to Mackinac Island. So I used the George Webb compound search technique and wanted to dig in there. And guess what? It turns out that Mackinac Island is the site, because remember, I've talked about how what we're dealing here is a clash of civilizations being fought on American soil. But that's exactly what was taking place at Mackinac Island in the late 17th century with the fur trade between the French Jesuits and then the Protestant group that came in there. And they waged war on the island. The Protestants won. So, but there are one or two Catholic churches there. And the item I sent to Andy, it's an article, and it's titled "The Missionaries of Mackinac Mission, 1823 to 1837," which is also a pivotal time in history for Louisiana and New Orleans. Presbyterians and Congregationalists on the American frontier. So this is the Dulles story as well, isn't it? In the American frontier. And that island was also used as, and it still is used as a gathering point for fur traders. That was the BlackBerry of its time, I guess, and the currency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you're talking about the early debut of biowarfare by the, it wasn't the Dutch East India Company, it was the other pelt company by John Jacob Astor, who was using, potentially, we don't know, smallpox and so forth to clear out the Indian populations. And Notre Dame became the kind of Jesuit center of this French expansion, which led all the way down the Mississippi to New Orleans here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there was this book, I can't remember the title of it, saying that in the early 20th century, in the interwar period, Russia had sent some furs in to various ports, using it as a form of transport of these vectors early on. And I know Mark Kulak has been doing research on Lyme disease and ticks and all that. But apparently, and by the way, I forgot to mention that the Mackinac Island is also the center where they kidnapped a lot of native children from the Ojibwe and Sioux and other peoples that are around the Great Lake area. And they converted them to either Catholicism or Protestantism. So this is we're talking about clash of European civilizations, but also native civilizations. So apparently, yes, John Jacob Astor, who of course is an Anglo-American person, right? He made his nut here in the U.S., but then as soon as he did, he became a British and became part of the establishment there. So there you have the Anglo-American alliance embodied in the Astor family bloodline.
Well, that fits in a lot with what Harley Schlanger's saying with, the British, they always wanted to have a bond, an instrument of indebtedness. So whether they owned it or not, there was going to always be this kind of Rothschild leverage point on anything they did. And the fur trade, you're right, so right. The fur trade going all the way down from the Wabash River, LaSalle, and all those guys, all the way down to here in New Orleans was the bloodline or the lifeline of America. The French knew that they needed to control the Mississippi. Andrew Jackson knew that you needed to control the Mississippi for the westward expansion. And it all kind of comes to a head here at the War of 1812 and 1815 with Andy Jackson. So it's been a great. I feel so McDuffy here. I'm going to all these places that I met with John. John and I met with Ed Haslam, and I'm talking with somebody who went to medical or was in school with Ed Haslam, a doctor. Her father went to school with Ed Haslam, and we're talking about all these New Orleans places, and all these places we talked with John. and it's the medical center that was doing the vaccine experiments on this side, the soft tissue cancer experiments. On the other side of Lake Pontchartrain, we had the monkey lab where they were doing the move it from the mouse to the monkey to then to the human. It's all right in here. I've just had the great opportunity to live this Dr. Mary's Monkey book, and even to visit some of these Lee and Me things that Dr. Judith Barry Baker, who's a very good friend of a couple of people here tonight. So it's been, and if you have to go back to John OLoughlin's readings of these books to really get a feel for how this was the centerpiece of control. These Nazi scientists coming in the 60s, and then McDuff's the guy who's trying to stop them. It's just such a great story, and that's my next book, but we're not quite there yet.
Incredible. And of course, where you are right now, George, is when on an industrial scale, they refine this whole zoonotic model of disease transfer that we're seeing today in 2020-21, using either pigs or cattle or most typically bats.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a very, very deep subject, and one that I have to defer to other people, especially Mark Kulak. I mean, Mark, kudos to Mark. He has really dug into the history of this sword and shield vaccine versus bioweapon thing that's been going on for so long. And oh man, what a mess it is. But yeah, I had run across that Russian furs into American ports thing too, and I have to say, the idea that something weird came out of Siberia, and the horrible Siberian virus, whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I tend to think that these things are created now, much more than that they just suddenly appear out of nature. Even if it's the darkest Africa or deep China or Siberia, I have a hard time with that. It's as much as we've seen through all the research that's going on. I just kind of think, this is more of a Plum Island project than it is a Siberian weird virus.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion, I don't know.
Well, Mark Kulak has done some incredible work. We talked about Eric Chubb being the kind of the mastermind, along with Kurt Blom, of the Nazi program and how that program moved to Fort Detrick. But Mark Kulak has done the connective tissue between those Nazi programs and the coronavirus. The guy named Feldman, W.H. Feldman. And you just have to watch Mark's incredible work. He just keeps delivering this in-depth stuff, which is so well documented, so well researched, so well presented. And I just have to say, I'm a big Neighborhood News Hour is a big Patreon of Mark Kulak. and you need to support Dr. Hamamoto and his efforts, and you need to support John OLoughlin and his efforts. John, you're doing a big thing for your dad coming up, and I want you to talk about that if you have a chance.
Sure, but it's still kind of in the I'm still kind of writing the script right now. It's going to just be a few days, centered around June 6th, and it'll be here on Mystery Island. So I don't have a lot of details to give yet, but there will be something. The occasion is the 50th anniversary of my father's death on June the 6th of 1971. Let me get back to Professor Hamamoto with a thought of my own, if I may. I've been reading this book, How the Nation Was Won, generally on my 11 o'clock shows. And in there, we see a whole new political dynamic that I had never seen before. And it is, if you put the New England colonists in the situation of trying to form a new world government that they could run themselves, that it would be, of the people, by the people, for the people, that it was about having a commonwealth. And they were always being played chess against by the British government, which wanted to tax everything, especially navigation and the ships that would come into the port. Well, there was this great, charter that Massachusetts and Connecticut had gotten, and when they first got their charters, that said that they could create their own laws, more or less, and they wouldn't let go of that. And so the successive governments of England are just always trying to impose royal governors and everything. Well, the dynamic I'm trying to get to is with the French, because what happens now is that for the new New England nation, or the Commonwealth, to succeed, it has to expand away from the ports. When they're in the ports, they're captive to the British economy. But if they could get inland, then they could create their own wealth. They could have industry. They could have, all kinds of wealth because of the vast resources interior in the inside of the United States. Well, who did the British play against those colonists? The French. Even though the British and the French are enemies, they were not such enemies that they were going to let the New England patriots get their own country. So they played against each other. And on the French side, this man is saying, and I never heard this before, that it was actually the Jesuits that kind of weaponized the Indian tribes into these terrorists that would do the horrible things that you read about in the grisly tales of the French and Indian War. Well, if anything is consistent in history, it is that, you have now down in New Orleans, you've got Tulane, you've got the Jesuit center of the South right there, which is where the Nazi stuff comes in. And, now you talk about using, what we call special operations, which is really terrorism or assassination, or, what I'm saying is that, yes, there's the Presbyterian groups going out there and, preaching their stuff. But earlier than that, in the 1600s, in the French colonies, which was an awful lot of North America at the time, the Jesuits had spread and were using the Indian tribes as a foil against the colonists of the New England and Virginia as well. So, trying to put that in a nutshell, I just never thought of it that way. That these great powers were not. It wasn't just us in England against France. It was a triangular thing, with us wanting our own independence, and we weren't going to give it up because we had this whole idea that we were going to create a new world.
Yeah, the third leg of the stool of the tripod are the great Indian nations, specifically Iroquois. They were quite formidable in terms of size, technology, and in intellect. And they were a very, very powerful ally. And some of this kind of drifted down a generation later into the fiction of James Fenimore Cooper. He grew up in the northern part of what is now New York, where the cultural memory of these incredible wars was still very much alive. So if we did as you're doing, John, if we do a radical epistemological reordering approach of our fiction, from Mark Twain, Life on the Mississippi, or An American Abroad, or James Fenimore, all of it, the classrooms would be full of students going, "Wow, this is the real history," and in the process, we'll get back our republic. We'll win it back, because part of the problem is that our historical legacy has been distorted on purpose, especially when the Department of Education was put in place, or Department of Miseducation was put in place there.
Well, my reaction to that is just tonight's conversation. We had a discussion about Andrew Jackson. And, you talked about Fenimore Cooper and the Last of the Mohicans and all this, and the role of Indian tribes. And we have the Cherokee, and we had different tribes, kicking in about how bad Andrew Jackson was. But then also as Americans, we say, well, wait a minute, he kicked the British out, and he realized that the lifeline of America was the Mississippi. If you don't have the Mississippi, you don't have a westward expansion. So everyone is I guess the beautiful thing about American culture is that we can talk about all these things and meet together and talk rather than just lob bombs at each other. And the what I see in Washington D.C. is this constant effort to divide us and not have a place like this where we can have a discussion. John, being a William and Mary guy, he's right in there with the whole thing. I mean, the whole rise of this idea of America and people willing to fight for America. And those people had this spirit. He does a lot of historical education for young groups, and this idea in The Flame in Your Heart, the Last of the Mohicans movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, that fire in the belly was not there in the mercenaries or the kids that were here from Gloucester, in England, or from wherever in France. And that was the inevitability of the American experiment, because you just can't beat people who really believe it in their heart. And that's what I've enjoyed about the How America Was Won series that John has done, is really shown that it's the flame inside that determines history, no matter how much negative machinations that are happening. The spirit, the true spirit, wins in the end, and that's really kind of cool. And it's true then, and it's true now. I mean, McDuff is winning. I can tell you that right now, meeting these people. McDuff is winning here in New Orleans.
Well, George, you're the man that's made it happen, and I'm very grateful, and I know everybody else is, that this story is going to be told and told again, and so that's just great. One other thing about the New Orleans connection, when I was talking to Chris Fogarty last night, the author of the Perfect Holocaust of Ireland, and he made reference to New Orleans as one of the British generals that attacked New Orleans, then became the lord in charge of all the military in Ireland, and it was his job to supervise the deprivation of the food, from the Irish. Because there was a potato famine in Ireland, but there was also a potato famine in England. And the English, they're the ones that had the guns, so they just said, give us the food, and it was 5 million according to Chris. But what he says is, look, all this stuff is in the past. I can say this about the Jesuits and the French Indians and the Presbyterians and the Calvinists and Allen Dulles and all this stuff. Right now, we've got enough on our plate. The stuff that we can't carry, resentments from 200 years ago. But if we let that resentment idea aside and just use our brains, use our reason, just think, well, why did that person do that? Like a chess game. Why did they do that? Figure it out. It's done. You can't change it. So you might as well analyze it and use it for your benefit, as a country, and that's what we haven't been doing during our lifetime. Is they've been taking away the history classes, making them dull, making the books impossible to read because they are so dry. I mean, this is what we need, is a George Webb, because George's books are anything but dry. My goodness. All right, enough of me.
No, absolutely. George asked the question of Tyrone whether people under 30 would appreciate this book. Absolutely. This is better than any video. In fact, George, I was thinking about your strategic question. What if you converted some of this into gameplay, like, gamification? Find a game designer and put all these different elements in there, because they have some best-selling games that are based on true history. And I think that's how a lot of the young guys, because it's mostly boys that are doing it, who are getting interested in medieval history, esoterica, the world of Islam. Their gateway are these video games that are very, very well researched. So why not some entrepreneurial game designer just putting this out there? It would be instructive as well as inspirational. especially the fact that, you're carrying the torch of truth that was handed metaphysically by Mr. Thomas OLoughlin, and you're carrying it forward and passing it on as well.
I definitely think McDuff would be a great video game. I would love to play that game, but you guys are too kind to me. But this McDuff thing, just as a gift that keeps on giving. We know by history, right? There's only one guy who's asked by the Joint Chiefs to research two guys, Oswald and Ruby, to report to Sullivan, to report to the Warren Commission, and that is one Thomas Francis OLoughlin. There's no other, which gets you into the whole milieu here. And I'm meeting with all these people that knew Marcello and knew Oswald and all these Ed Haslam people and all the Monkey Lab and the David Ferrier with the 20,000 mice and everything. I mean, it's just crazy. So it's been really fun down here, and it is kind of a game. I could almost imagine, like, you go get a wedge, you got to go to the Monkey Lab, get a Monkey Lab wedge, and then you got to go over to the Public Health Service where the linear accelerator was, and where they were trying to knock out genes and stuff. But there is, I didn't believe it before I came here that there was this bioweapons flavor to New Orleans, but I definitely believe it now. There was this Nazi thread that came through the Perm Index, Oshner being the key guy. Who was setting these guys up, and you needed a guy to ferry literally back and forth to South America where these guys were hiding with their Nazi weapons programs, and that guy was actually named David Ferry. So we're going to his houses. We've been to his 3 or 4 different houses. It's just really been an incredible story, and there's only one guy researching these two guys, Ruby and Oswald, and it's McDuff. So it really would be a great game. I'm not saying I invented it. McDuff's the guy.
Yes.
and Charles W. Lyons probably, and the other guys on his team. I don't want to just say it's McDuff, but it's going to be that team. And it's the same team, which is so cool. This game is so cool because it's also got the Polish connection and the connection to Golanowski, and he's outing all these spies for the FBI, or he's trying to get to the FBI about all these CIA and KGB spies. It really is an incredible story. And, McDuff is going to come out with a book a little bit later this year with a lot of material that was recovered in John's deep dive earlier this year. I think everybody should come to the deal that he's going to have in June and be a part of it. Be a part of that curation of all these artifacts where this really, really happened. This is a real guy. And, it's, and I don't mean to make anybody larger in death than they are in life, but it is fun. It's just fun. This is like a fun video game to play. It's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark in a way. You feel like you're kind of like Indiana Jones going from place to place, and it is fun.
I was thinking that my dad left breadcrumbs. They didn't use that phrase back then, but why was it that he bought his first house where I was, as a young child on Leyte Drive? He never spoke of his service in the Navy. We never knew he was involved in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. We never knew that. But there it is, Leyte Drive. So it meant something. And I don't even know if the next place where he bought was Arthur Drive, whether that was a reference to MacArthur. But George, you and I drove up and down the roads in Oxon Hill and in Fort Washington and everywhere we were going. We kind of had the feeling that he was there. And you remember those rides. And then we went to Oxon Hill Manor, after with Jenny that time. And anyway, that whole idea of that area just having resonance of my dad's choices. And as we drove around, we seemed to be getting revelations of what was going on that we couldn't have seen before. Really, I think when you and I got together, that was the magic, that just now we got a connection here that we can start working this out.
Well, sorry, Doctor, but I remember John taking me down to Fort Hunt and saying, hey, Gellin was here and he split the spy organization. Half went to Russia, half went to Fort Belvoir here because they shut down Fort Hunt. And then they reunified them. And we don't know if that's perm index or not, but it could be perm index, like perm, to get under Hoover's security index. And New Orleans could be that spot, and it could be here in Fort Hunt with these people. And it's like, it's all coming true. It's all coming true. The very first time, and Task Force was with me, and she had this Hildy gal who had been gone around the Nazi high command and said this was the exfiltration plan. This was the thing that they were going to reunite the two wings, the Red Orchestra that Gellin had sent east, and the sort of the Gellin organization that had come to Fort Belvoir. And so it was all like coming together for me in real time there. This is almost 3 years ago now. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be a great story if this is how it ended up? If the actual data and all the documentation came in, and then the David Wise book came in, and then the Sullivan memo came in with McDuff being the key guy doing Oswald and Ruby. And now all these other CIA memos that are coming in saying, yeah, he was CIA. And yeah, he was probably turned at some point as an FBI informant. I'm like, oh my God, we're in the middle of this thing. We're going to crack it. And then I had the news come to me that Oliver Stone is coming back to New Orleans to do the documentary, to finish the unfinished business, to put the missing pieces in. And I said, I know these people. I talked to them 3 years ago. They're coming in because we're putting the missing pieces in right now. And Oliver Stone is saying, this is a great story, and I'm going to finish what I started with JFK. And it is an incredible feeling. I tell you, Dr. Hamamoto, I just want to say, Dr. Hamamoto, thank you so much for your incredible help all along the way, researching us. I don't know how you do what you do, but you research in a way that is incredible. And it provided all these PDF documents, all your PDFs, that just all the research and all the cross-referencing that makes this story come together. So I don't know what you do, some kind of scholar search that we don't have access to, but that's what nails this stuff.
Well, I do another type of research. I experienced this today. Yeah, I wasn't going to say this, but I'll tell you because I can do everybody knows about the academic part of it. But yesterday, after our conversation on your show, I did remote viewing, and I went into the NATO headquarters, and I saw the generals, and they had the whole monitor screen up there, curved screens. And you were on there. They were watching you. And then today, shortly, between my show and coming on here, I had the same image. The NATO generals are observing this going down in real time. They're probably watching right now, I'm pretty sure. So that's one of my research methodologies that I have not shared with anybody until right this moment. Because I think this story, the gameplay, if you want to put it that way, if you're under 30, is coming to a grand conclusion. And the fact that the greatest living American director around, Oliver Stone, is now involved, tells me that, from an academic standpoint, from any standpoint, the whole history is going to have to be rewritten. And that's an amazing accomplishment. How often does that happen? It doesn't, that whole change of the episteme, if you want to call it, the epistemological system changes. It's like a Copernican revolution of history. Let's say, put it in those terms. And you two gentlemen were right at the center of it. And man, I'm only too happy to contribute.
Yeah, I think that you're right about the generals watching it, and that's because they figured out that George is a general too.
Yes. Well, I kept on, reading references to NATO, and that was really my big takeaway. One of the biggest lessons that George Webb has given me is that, I was looking at the Pentagon, but it really goes beyond the Pentagon. It goes to NATO. as really is the heart of the New World Order system, and it's different offshoots, like the World Health Organization, United Nations, and all that. So you really led us into the core. This is really the centerpiece here of where we're at today in the 21st century.
Well, it's amazing in the story how things have come in at exactly the right time. It's kind of like right when you need potatoes in the stone soup, the potatoes come in. And John fired up this relationship with Harley Schlanger in Berlin. Hey, that doesn't happen every day. And the EIRs started coming in, these executive intelligence reports. And here came down the pike Dave Underdown, the incredible brain in Michigan, inhaled this whole perm index thing, and we're really getting down into, hey, this is the Nazis being sheep dipped as maybe Soviet defectors or whatever. But anyway, there was these EIR reports on perm index and everything. Louis Bloomfield at the OSS and all these connections to Wexner and Max Fisher and all the groundwork we didn't have to do because the LaRouche organization had done all these EIRs on the perm index. And my fundamental thesis in all this has been dark weapons. It's the thing they would hide would be dark weapons right from the very start, because they couldn't get those into the United States. They couldn't take those things from the death camps, those secret dark projects, and ever publicly put those into an American university, or even in some cases, even a DOD facility like Fort Detrick. So you would have to have them proxied. You'd have to have them covert. And if you follow that covert trail, starting with the Oxnard lab here in New Orleans, when they first bring them over, David Ferry, Clay Shaw, all these guys in the perm index, and then it festers. It spreads like a virus out from here in New Orleans. If you really read those EIRs, it gives you the roadmap. And so I just kind of follow John's lead. I'm never do any work that's already been done, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah, and Harley just came in right at the right time with that perm index EIR.
And the EIR articles and research, and by the way, I believe that Lyndon LaRouche was probably one of the most important public intellectuals that America had to offer in this period of time. But it also, those articles helped to establish, to underscore the role of Private First Class Heinz Kissinger and all this. They were doing this research a long time ago. And also, strangely enough, we have to give some credit to the John Birch Society, who had his number early on. And I never thought in my career I'd ever be praising the Birch John Society. That's what we used to call it. Yeah, it's wonderful. Oh, while we're at it though, let's remember Dr. Douglas Valentine.
Yes, indeed.
While we're talking about all these fortuitous elements that come together, that's the way the universe operates, doesn't it? Though you find you put the intentionality out there, and you're looking for truth, and so long as your heart is pure, it comes to you.
I believe.
Yeah, that's so true. The Bill Barr being the bag man for the CIA, running back and forth with the Mena Airport, and then bringing in, and then Mark Kulak comes in with the research about Donald Barr and how he looked like he was recruiting all the people to come up with these cover stories for these paperclip scientists, and he does all that Donald Barr research, and with the OSS. And all the research out of, remember we went to Baltimore where they were shipping all the weapons and they flipped it over. And I can't remember the fort, began with an H. I can't remember the name of the fort. But, when we took all these field trips and we went to all these places, and this history did come alive for us. And, all along the way, I mean, Doug Valentine was a huge piece because he was the one who said, hey, all these Phoenix program guys were the ones who then go over into Iran-Contra. Bob Mueller, the Mule, John Redd, the Mule, by Chip Tatum. they're all the people from the Phoenix program. John Kerry, all these guys were in the drug program. The Richard Armitage, who worked for Henry Kissinger and doing. I remember John when we saw the Armitage plane, the Khashoggi-1 coming up the Potomac.
Yeah.
I remember him saying, "Hey, there's the Baldwin Bishop Bank, and before that there was the Nugan Hand Bank, and then it became BCCI, and it's just they just changed the names. It's now HSBC with Comey, and there's such a continuity." And I just don't want to live in a world where there's not that richness of continuity, where I don't understand historical events in this kind of flow. I don't want to look at things in a discrete way and not understand how they connect. I want to see that flow and continuity of history. And John laid it out for me. We were looking at the plane. He goes, "Oh yeah. Let me tell you how this goes. Boom, 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 boom." And right there in that same plane, Khashoggi-1, you also had Pan Am doing the drug flights, and then Evergreen Aviation, then Saudi Air with Jeff Epstein. I love it when it comes down to one showpiece like that, where you can just kind of explain the whole history.
And I can add one name to the Pan Am story. I think the president of Pan Am I forgot his first name, but it's Halabi. He was a Lebanese American. His parents were immigrants here. But he's most famous for having a daughter by the name of Elisa Halabi, who later married into the house, the royal house of Jordan. She's now known as Queen Noor. So there's the American Jordanian Pan Am connection there. Another point that falls together, another piece that falls together.
Another thing I hadn't known, just to slip it in, was that Jamal Khashoggi was first cousins with Dodi Fayed.
Uh-huh.
Wow, I had never known that.
Yeah, all the Khashoggis, I mean, it's like we're ship weapons to both sides, and then we're going to get the deal for the pipeline. All we have to do is demonstrate an Al-Qaeda of something, Al-Qaeda of West Schenectady, and all they have to do is blow up one thing, fire hydrant, and then we'll get UN money, we'll create a green zone, and then we're going to ramrod a pipeline through there, and it's just this kind of green zone of America kind of formulaic approach to getting cash from the U.S. Congress, but it seems to work every time. And what's amazing is how little you can do in terms of a false flag to get untold billions of dollars. I only have to fire 2 really old, decrepit torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin at Jim Morrison's dad. And then I get 13 years of war of dropping bombs on rice paddies. I mean, that's a good deal if you're in the weapons business.
Well, let that stand as a warning for us while we're being softened up by the Harry and Meghan show. I think they're setting us up for something. Gentlemen, do you have any ideas what the hammer is going to drop on us in terms of a false flag that they're going to be put forward as comforters to us, and they're going to make America and the world feel better, recovering from some sort of event that was scripted by the B film writer, Adam Schiff? What's your projection? Because we're not buying it, are we? We're not buying the BS.
I'll let John have the first shot.
My ideas of royalty provide a different kind of projection.
Or projectile?
Well, my thoughts immediately go back to the Syrian pipeline. It's just like they had a deep freeze when Trump went in. And all of a sudden, it was okay to be American again and okay to have American jobs and manufacturing. And then, it was frozen in time at the Capitol PSYOP. And then they put it into a quick freeze, and then they, microwaved it back to 2016 like we never had Trump. And now it's back to the Syrian pipeline. It's right to unfinished business. And literally, I think Biden was bombing minutes after he became inaugurated. And they had a plan, and it's like triumph of Der Willen. It's like if we have the will on our projections, our 20-year projection of pipelines everywhere, damn it, we're going to get that pipeline. And I could see them traipsing out a Harry or his wife as a tap dance show, like they did with sort of the same role that Tony Blair played in the selling of the Iraq War. Remember, George Bush was too obvious. It was like, oh, this is another Bush war.
Mhm.
But then they went over and tap danced with Tony Blair, and he said this is a good war. And they kind of sold it to Europe. And I think the Royals are going to be the tap dancers to try to sell. They're kind of the minstrel show to try to sell the Syrian pipeline.
Especially since his mother was Diana, who was about to be married to Dodi Fayad before she was assassinated. So I sense another female sacrificial ritualistic victim on the horizon. And both of them are being set up to comfort the world and say, it's all right, we're here. We're here in Hollywood, Adam Schiff land, to play out this B movie for you one more time.
Well, that's chilling, but I think it has the ring of something they might do. I can't. What's the Harry's wife again? I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Meghan Markle.
Yeah, she has that Pocahontas kind of femme fatale essence about her. I don't know. Maybe.
Does she have some ethnicity? As I recall, she might have some African blood or something that darkens her and might put her in that Dodi Fayed don't go there category for the Royals. Because one of the big things that I think people just don't want to face is that the probably the most racist institution in the whole world are those people, that live in that castle called Windsor, whose names I guess I wouldn't say, but you know what I'm saying? The people that wear the tiaras and the crowns and things. I mean, they don't like dark people. They just don't.
No. I traced her. Well, I won't say I traced her lineage, but we talked about Meghan Markle and Harry today on my show. And my hypothesis, and this is where the citizen researchers are really important here, but I think she represents a bloodline of the lower Nilotic civilization, going back to, let's say, these dead cities like Kush that the Egyptians took over, then the Ottomans, then the Romans, went up to the Mediterranean, and then married into the House of Windsor. So I think she's a welcomed member of the inner circle, but she's playing this, she is a failed actress after all. She's playing a certain role there because she is the connection that legitimizes the throne in that part of the world. The Nile, we're talking about the Mississippi, right? How about the Nile River, the civilizational flow from Lower Nile, North Africa, through the Mediterranean, by way of Venice, right, John? EIR, the Venetians, and then City of London. There you go.
That is the biggest link in history that people don't know about is it's from Rome to Venice to Constantinople to Venice to Amsterdam to London. And in London, the City of London runs its own shop. It's not governed by England or Great Britain or anybody. It's their own thing, and they run it. So that's the money. That's the big, huge pile of money that's been pushed around the world by, conquerors from Julius Caesar to Alexander the Great and the Venetian doges and William of Orange, for goodness sakes. It's all connected.
Well, I once heard a lecturer talk about great books, and I can't remember. It was like a Michael Medved kind of guy, but he was talking about the Seven Hills and this continuity with the Seven Hills, and they were talking about Constantinople and then going to Rome and then London. I didn't know that there was Seven Hills in London. I've been all over London. I didn't know there was Seven Hills in London. I mean, 30 feet above sea level, but then Washington D.C. supposedly having Seven Hills, and I don't know where the next great concentration is going to be, like Saskatoon or wherever, but it seems to keep moving west. But I do think that those that would like to build empire or give the heirs of empire definitely do harken back on these old tropes. Uh, because if you look at the city of London, it's not very big. It's only a mile square. They are all about Londinium. They're all about saving these precious relics and canals and, below the street level and so forth of these Roman artifacts. So I do think that they, in their quiet moments, in their smoky robes moments, with their little ceremonies, do actually believe this stuff. Do believe that somehow there's some sacred sacrament from God that anoints them to determine how world events will go. And we have to be the ones that kind of slap them out of it, sprinkle the water on their face and go, hey, you're not, the first emperor of Constantinople here. You're not Constantine. You're actually just a guy who flew a helicopter once or twice, and you got red hair, and I don't know what's, Diana was doing that weekend, but you don't look anything like your brother, and settle down now. And, quell your desires for world domination just for a minute.
Well, remember what I've talked about more than once, bastardy and buggery. It's playing out here in this particular scenario. And remember, William the Conqueror was called William the Conqueror by his supporters. His enemies knew him as William the Bastard. So bastards make world history. We have to be very careful. As silly as their little hair-pulling contest, as you might describe it, George, is, the implications of it are of world historical importance. He might say, hey, I'm going to claim the throne. I'm a bastard. I have nothing to lose, everything to gain.
Yeah, I think of William of Orange and William and Mary, where John went to school, their namesake there. They called it the Glorious Revolution. Well, if you were, I don't know who they unseated. I can't remember if it was Matilda or Gertrude or one of those queens.
It was James II.
Who was it? James II?
James II, yeah.
Yeah. If you're James II, you don't think of it as the Glorious Revolution.
No. See, where's my head?
If you read this book, you'll understand that it was nothing glorious about it. It was a financial takedown, just like the NATO people took down the Soviet Union. It was the oligarchical money, the old money that had come from Venice to Amsterdam, and now they make the leap across into London on the shoulders of William of Orange, who is basically their front man. But it's a financial coup to take over, and they suck all the money out of the treasury, go to war, and what do they use the wars for? To take territory and conquer new lands? No, to enrich themselves. It's the same thing that they're doing right now. That is one of the wonderful eye-opening parts of this book by Graham Lowry. I'm so grateful for, because who would ever know this stuff without, just like what you've done, George. I think Graham Lowry deserves a great bit of credit equally for putting together the 1630 to 1750 period, which nobody ever wants to study. Oh no, I don't want to look at that stuff. 1710, are you kidding me? No, that's where the gold is. That's where the stuff they don't want you to see. That's the part where they say, oh, this is boring. Don't look at that. Don't look at that.
Well, when I watched your show last night with the great author, the Irish author, I thought, tell me his name again, John.
Chris Fogarty.
Chris Fogarty, yeah. I thought, man, it would be great to have John over there in an Irish pub, sitting across from Chris Fogarty, because he was a little bit of a technophobe, a little bit. I don't think he was used to the internet and all that. I thought, man, it would be great to get a camera on you two guys across the pub from each other. I thought, man, that's a trip that I want to finance someday.
Chicago, George. We go to Chicago, and we'll go to our Chief O'Neill's Irish pub, and we'll sit down and have some pints and some chat.
I didn't realize she was in Chicago. That's easy. We can do that easy.
Yeah, he was born in Chicago and then moved as a very young child to Ireland and grew up there until 54 when he came back to the States.
He had a very Irish accent, so
Yeah.
I guess that's wherever you spend your teenage years. That's the brogue you acquire. But I wouldn't have picked him from somebody from Chicago. But everybody should check it out. It's a great interview.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and it's a great book too. So Chris Fogarty's book is definitely an eye opener. We're exploding minds here. You know, this is like wow, over and over and over again. And you know, Professor Hamamoto, let's not skip over your amazing book, Servitors of Empire. Oh my God, what an eye opener that book is! And folks, if you haven't read that yet, please do. I'm afraid my reading of it got canceled, terminated by YouTube, along with everything else. But we're putting it back as fast as we can. But in the meantime, please get yourself a copy of Servitors of Empire. I see Connie Bevan, our good friend, has been reading it lately.
Thank you.
And
We also have to thank Connie Bevan for transcribing this too. How important that was after the takedown. I mean, she recorded like a medieval scribe, you know, preserving it, you know, meticulously. And that's how we win. That's how we win.
yeah, and Addie has been a big help for you too, George, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Addie does great stuff. Andy, right over here, he's you know,
is
he's
Andy
all
over
there. Andy, come here.
there? Yeah, let's say hi to Andy.
I wanted to say hi. Just say hi to everybody, Dr. Hamamoto and everybody.
Hi, Andy.
Hey
Thank you
guys,
very
how's
much.
it going?
Pretty
Oh,
good.
I'm gonna chat?
Yeah, you go ahead and hear.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have an earbud in.
Yeah, Andy, you're the greatest line
we were just saying
producer
hi
out
to the
there.
whole team.
Hey, I try.
Are you enjoying yourself down here?
New Orleans. I know we're supposed to leave this weekend, George, but I think I might stay.
Yeah. I think he loves New Orleans.
And I think Mr. OLoughlin needs to get his butt down here, and I think Mr. Hamamoto does too.
Yeah,
it's going to be a great time. Mr. OLoughlin.
Sir.
I don't mean to overstep my boundaries, but is there, I always pronounce his name wrong, actually, OLoughlin. Mr. OLoughlin, are you having a little get-together out on Mystery Island here in a month or so, or 2 months?
Yes, a few days surrounding June the 6th. We're going to have a little memorial and celebration of my father's life, and probably just get together and do some more research. You know, I expect a number of people are going to want to come that have been here before, and we may need to rent an extra house, actually. So that I'm kind of working. I haven't really done much yet, but I've got to do the research and say how many people can we accommodate on the island. And then, you know, I don't know what else to do except for, you know, the only limit is how many people we can accommodate. That's the only thing. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. The only reason I mention that is because I'm looking forward to seeing you out there again too. So the McDuff Dabala connection is going to be reunited here in a month or so. So all our fans out there and Mr. Webb, we're going to be doing some old school shows here soon. And is there anything in New Orleans that you guys want us to, any spots or any special places you guys want us to visit while we're down here? Have we missed anything?
The studio,
you know, the one place
Lenoir.
Yeah. Daniel Lenoir. We went over to Congo Square earlier on your recommendation by Louis Armstrong Square, and the only other place we were told was the secret crypt or the secret sacred site, burial site of the Freemasons, and supposedly there's some.
Have you told them the 10-foot pole story?
No. We're running out of time. That's the only problem. So next time.
Next time.
Oh, I want to hear that.
Oh well, give them the byline. Give them the quick.
Okay, so here in New Orleans at the cemeteries, You know the phrase, "I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole," right?
Right.
That's what all George's ex-girlfriends think about him. But
That was to slide the bodies out of the crypts when you stop paying your rent for your crypt.
Yes, in New Orleans, if you don't pay your money for your tomb, they literally take a 10-foot pole and push your remains in between the wall and the edge of the crypt, so all the bodies kind of congeal and create this coronavirus jello down here in New Orleans. So
And the other one,
we're on top of the coronavirus studies. We think we got another lead.
yeah, and then the other one was what was the other phrase? Not the 10-foot pole phrase, but
10-foot.
anyway,
there was
there was some phrases that came from New Orleans here because we're below sea level and the crypts being above sea level, and we'll have that story for you the next time on
Thursday Night Trio.
Thank you.
Excellent.
That's what I'm here for.
That's right.
All right, everybody, be sure and tune in this time next week for the next edition of Thursday Night Trio with Professor Hamamoto, George Webb, myself, and maybe, we don't know, but maybe Andy will be back too. Andy DeBala, so good to have you, man. And yeah, you're welcome. Just come on by. We love to have you.
Excellent. Bye, gentlemen.
Thanks,
Oh,
guys.
wow. That went fast. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.